All right, we are live. Hello. I am going to flip on the switch on everything else here. Hope you're all having a good week. Happy Friday to those who celebrate. All right, we're gonna get started here. Guess what? Den is back. We missed him so much. I was worried sick too. So in the comments, Den is moderating. He'll keep an eye out on all the comments that people are sharing online. And as always, he's also keeping track of anything questions you have to ask between stories. You can always support the channel here by going to patreon.com/hemant. I appreciate that all the time. You can also subscribe for free to my newsletter, which is right there. And as always, if you want your question answered, you can leave a super chat or you can just ask it and maybe we'll get to it between stories. And we have so many big things to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I have to talk about Mark Robinson because it's the story that fills me with so much joy this week. Mark Robinson is this guy who is running for governor of North Carolina. He is the current lieutenant governor of North Carolina. And it's North Carolina is one of those states where the governor and the lieutenant governor do not run on the same ticket. They run separately. So the governor, Roy Cooper, is a Democrat, but the lieutenant governor, Mark Robinson, is very much not a Democrat. He's like a hardcore MAGA cultist. In fact, when Kamala Harris was thinking about who to choose for her vice president, Roy Cooper was on the short list. After all, he is a Democratic governor in kind of a purple reddish state, and maybe that helps in the election, you know. And Roy Cooper was thinking, you know what? If you choose me to be vice president, that means Mark Robinson would be running the state of North Carolina, which is a horrible thing for his state. And Roy Cooper actually said, you should not vet me for vice president. That's how bad Mark Robinson is. He made Roy Cooper not want to even be considered for vice president. So let's talk about Mark Robinson because I'm not kidding when I say he's one of those mega cultists. The reason I knew about this guy long before he was running for governor is because he has a habit of saying horrible, horrible things in front of church audiences. Just to give you, a couple examples of things he has said. In 2021, he told a crowd at a right-wing rally that Christian patriots of this nation will own this nation and rule this nation. So that's scary. He said that forcing religion in public schools through like mandatory prayers that would prevent mass shootings, which is not how that works at all. He said transgenderism and homosexuality amount to filth. He used the word filth. He said the trans movement is demonic and full of antichrist spirit. He said straight couples are superior to gay ones. He also said famously at a rally this past June, he said to the crowd, some folks need killing. And, your guess is as good as mine in terms of who he thinks those folks are. But that's a scary thing for any politician to say in front of a large audience. So I'm going to get back to some of the crazy things he said in a little bit. But the reason all this is very, very amusing this week, because again, he is an extremist, he's relying on the Christian vote to carry him into the governorship, where right now, not only is he losing to the Democrat Josh Stein, he's losing by a lot. Like Donald Trump famously like drags down other Republicans in down ballot elections, but Mark Robinson may actually be dragging Trump down. That's how unpopular he is. There was an article this week in an outlet called The Assembly, which covers North Carolina politics, and the headline is just glorious. Let me share this with you here. Ex-porn shop employees say Mark Robinson was a regular. He denies it. Mark Robinson is the man on the left, the big guy there. But some of the things that are interesting in this article, I'll get back to the specifics in a second, but they mention in this piece that in 2022, Mark Robinson wrote a memoir. And he wrote in there that he found Jesus in the late 1980s. Or, yeah, sometime in the late 1980s. He found Jesus. He became born again. He's been a good Christian ever since, you would think. And yet, according to this article, in the 1990s and early 2000s, like whatever training wheels you have as a Christian when you just become a Christian, you might say, yeah, I accepted Jesus, but I was still kind of a sinner for a little while there. Well, guess what? When you're in the 90s and the early 2000s, those training wheels have been on for a long time. You should figure it, you should have it figured out by then. Well, it turns out during those 90s, 2000s, when he was more obscure and not a politician, he spent like all of his free time going to sex shops to the point where they all knew who the guy was. Okay, that's how often he went to these places. And the main source in this article is a guy named Louis Money, which is the shadiest possible name imaginable. And guess what? This guy does have a shady past, but it's not just one dude. So that's important. But let me get to this article here. Money, 52, told the assembly that Robinson came in as often as 5 nights a week to watch porn videos in a private booth. 5 other men who said they were former employees or customers during this period also told the assembly that Robinson visited 2 of these stores, Gents Video and News and I-40 Video and News. I-40 suggests like we're just getting off the highway at this point and going to get taken care of or to take care of yourself, whatever. Listen, I'm not even judging the dude, but we'll get back to this in a second. Scrolling down, this is a picture of Mark Robinson speaking at church. Anyway, in addition, Money said, Robinson purchased hundreds of bootleg porn videos that Money sold on the side. He was good for at least one a week, Money said. But Money said Robinson didn't pay for the last one, which he described as a compilation of super hardcore films he acquired in New York City that were too risque to be sold in North Carolina. That's the sort of stuff Mark Robinson likes most. And listen, I don't care. I genuinely would not care what Mark Robinson does in his free time if he wasn't running for office, and two, if he wasn't running for office on a platform of I'm the Christian and that makes me the moral dude in this race. And also, he wants to just take away women's rights and he trashes LGBTQ people. You cannot do all that pretending you're trying to take the moral high ground on those issues and then do this in your free time, right? That's the problem I have with this story. And also, sorry, gotta get this out of the way. 5 nights a week? Like hundreds of videos? How do you find time for that? I don't understand it. Like maybe if you're working a lot and you're busy and let's say you don't even have kids, but you're working 5 nights a week? Jesus, how does anyone have that much free time? As an adult, I don't understand it. College students are busier than that. So, anyway, his campaign denies all of this. Of course they do. They called the story bullshit. That's a direct quotation, which is kind of hilarious coming from the Christian campaign team. But they did say, yeah, Mark Robinson does know that Louis Money fellow, but not because he visited sex shops, just cuz. But like, first of all, Money's recollections of Robinson are very specific, and those 5 other dudes they interviewed also seem to know a lot about the guy. I want to share with you a wonderful quotation from this guy, Money, as well. Uh, this may be my favorite thing that I've read out loud in a very long time. Here we go. This went on for several years, Money said. Robinson came in after his shifts at pizza restaurants and hung out for hours. He said Robinson's tastes were fairly standard for a straight man, though he added, I know he might have problems with gay people, but I don't think he has problems with lesbians. This is the Jesus candidate for office. Great quotation right there. Love that he's calling that out. So again, where am I going with this? These people have fond memories of the guy. Even if money was making all this up, which I don't really buy, I think this is legit. It still doesn't account for all the other employees who have very specific memories of Robinson's visits to their stores. And by the way, it's not like they all hate the guy. They all say things like, when Robinson came to the shop, he was awesome. He would sometimes bring us pizza because he worked at a pizza place. Like, they actually fondly remember that dude and they like the dude back then. Now he's like a MAGA cultist who is just extreme and they're not vouching for him now. But again, if you were trying to say this, if you were thinking these guys are out to get Mark Robinson or something, I don't think that's what you would expect anyone to say. Yeah, he was a really cool guy. He came in, he brought us food. We chatted for a while. We liked him. And yet that's what all these guys are saying. So again, this should not be a story. I don't care what this guy did in his private life, especially before he was in elected office, and especially when it's all legal and consensual, which all of this is. But when your entire political career and your entire political brand is promoting Christian extremism and painting yourself as the moral savior that the state needs, and you treat LGBTQ people as sexual deviants. And the only time I've heard Mark Robinson use the word pornography in speeches is when he's talking about public school teachers, supposedly like feeding that to children because they read books. Then your non-Jesus-y actions should become a campaign issue because Mark Robinson is a hypocrite. And the Republicans who vote for him are hypocrites. And the Christians who prop this guy up are hypocrites. Like, Mark Robinson's the guy who made his religion the center of his political persona. And now it seems pretty clear that what he says is very different from what he does. So yeah, it's about damn time all of this hypocrisy caught up to him. And like I said, he has said horrible things recently for many years. So it's not like hypocrisy is new. It's not like he's secretly a nice dude who volunteers. No, he always says the worst things imaginable all the time. Let me give you another example of that. This is a post he made in 2018. 2018. Okay. Check this out. I see the comments. Don't worry, we're getting to that soon. This is a thing he posted in 2018. The first sentence doesn't matter. Look at the second sentence. This foolishness about Hitler disarming millions of Jews and then marching them off to concentration camps is a bunch of hogwash. He's a Holocaust denier on top of all the other horrible things he has said and done. Like, this guy, he is so horrible at everything. And of course, when it comes to abortion, this is no different. He has said I think he said this in a 2021 speech, that once a woman is pregnant, it's not her body anymore. Let me show you his campaign website also, because I found this interesting. Um, Here we go. This is his campaign website, and he had this interesting issues page. Of course, he's for the Second Amendment, loves the Second Amendment, right? But look at this section under pro-life. The last line, as a Christian, Mark will honor the sanctity of life. But of course, post Roe v. Wade, after the Dobbs decision, that's probably not something you want to brag about in the state of North Carolina, where abortion rights are like on the ballot. So that line is no longer on his campaign page. This is from the Internet Archive, like from it's from a couple of years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, it's from 2023. He has removed this line from his page. So that's interesting that he's like the most anti-abortion person you will ever find, and yet even he's backing away from saying all these horrible abortion things. He actually just put out a campaign ad this week that talks about how he wants to make sure the people who need medical procedures and stuff, it's always got to be safe. We got to make exceptions and things like that, which is a lie because he's the most extreme guy you can find. And of course, then there was this headline that you may have seen a couple of years ago because, again, very anti-abortion. This guy, just check out the headline. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, an outspoken conservative, says he paid for an abortion in 1989. Which, by the way, if you do the timeline on this thing, remember he found Jesus in the late 80s, which I assume would not be like Christmas Eve 1989. It's probably before that. So my understanding is he found Jesus and then paid for an abortion. What does that tell you about his supposed morality? Who knows anymore at this point, right? Uh, and in case you're, and he paid for his wife's abortion at the time, which again shouldn't be a story. That should be a normal thing people are allowed to do. But when you're Mark Robinson, that hypocrisy is a story. Um, and by the way, his wife is not much better on any of this stuff. I wanted to show you this story as well. Actually, I'll just show you the headline because this is what his wife is doing during all this stuff. Where did it go? Come back. There we go. From the Associated Press. North Carolina regulators say a nonprofit run by Lieutenant Governor's wife owes the state $132,000. She's stealing money from the state to run her nonprofit. And even that's not as horrible as this other headline that came out, I think, last month. The Girl Scouts sued the wife of North Carolina Republican gubernatorial candidate Mark Robinson over nearly $3,000 in money owed. And they won. She stiffed the Girl Scouts. She bought all the Thin Mints, wrote them a check for $3,000, which is a lot of cookies, and the check like bounced, and then she never made up for it. Just took the cookies and ran or something. She stiffed the Girl Scouts. Like, what the hell? Lying in the name of Jesus appears to be their family business. And when that abortion story came out, North Carolina Republicans, they didn't comment on it. They didn't want to comment on it. They said it was a personal matter, which again, I agree with them on that. They wanted to respect Mark Robinson's privacy. And yet, we're talking about the same party and the same candidate who are all pushing for policies to restrict medical options for women because they don't think women deserve that kind of privacy. Like, all these people think abortion is murder. And then when one of their own gets an abortion and pays for an abortion, they're like, well, I guess murder is fine. Like, it's a personal matter now. I don't know. I still haven't seen them comment on the sex shop allegations. They're all dodging that one with a 10-foot pole, which is, I don't know. I don't want to use measurements with the story about sex shops. You know, the irony here is that Mark Robinson's life, it represents the future that progressives are fighting for. One where if you personally want to go to a sex shop, go. No one cares. If you want to get an abortion or you need to get an abortion, go get an abortion. That's between you and your partner and stuff like that, and your doctor. It's not anyone else's business. And Mark Robinson has taken advantage of all those freedoms while at the same time running for office as a conservative who wants to revoke all those freedoms from everyone else. He is living proof that sinners, as Christians believe them to be, can do just fine. This guy had abortions because it was convenient or whatever. He went to sex shops because he felt like it. And he still found a way to be successful in the political world, in his words, like despite all those things. Because why would they hinder you? They shouldn't hinder you. But now the only way he can become governor is by telling Christian audiences that the sort of actions he's taken his entire life are evil and disqualifying if you are anybody except Mark Robinson. Like, no one expects a politician to be perfect. I expect them to do basic small lies. I expect them to be hypocrites in some way or another. But like, Robinson is proof that in the Republican Party, the truth is just completely irrelevant. Hypocrisy, totally irrelevant. As long as you deny everything and then attack the people who point out what you did, gullible conservative voters will always treat you like a king. I think my favorite headline from all of this, I do want to give them credit. It came from New York Magazine. Let me see if I could find this here. Here we go. Just a beautiful headline. Mark Robinson, the Republican candidate for governor in North Carolina, reportedly watched porn in private booths up to 5 days a week in the 90s. He strenuously denies that, as well as the Holocaust. Beautiful headline. 10 out of 10. No notes. That is perfect. Um, I think I think that's all we got to say because you know what? Next week, Mark Robinson will have a different scandal. Someone else will find out something about his past that totally violates everything he's running on right now. And the sad thing is, he's losing in the polls right now, but you never know how these things are going to turn out. This is the guy Christians are voting for. This is the guy they want their kids to grow up to be like because they treat their politicians like idols, don't they? Okay, I'll pause there. What questions do we have, Den? What comments do we have on any of this? Robin says, I have no problem with the visits to porn shops, but I have strong issues with the hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. Same old mantra of the religious. Yeah, again, and what they're doing is very different from what they're saying. And so all the more reason for everyone to call them out on it. When you are like Ted Haggard, for those of you who remember 20 years ago, and you spend your life giving sermon after sermon about how gay people are evil, and then you turns out you enjoy visiting male escorts, then that stuff doesn't get to stay private. Now you are being not just a hypocrite, but someone whose hypocrisy is literally harming other people because of what you do for a living. So at that point, it's fair game. I hope there's more stuff we learn about Mark Robinson because I don't know what it'll take for conservative voters in North Carolina to realize this guy is just, he has no principles. He has no platform on which to stand because he'll just say or do whatever the hell he wants and then say something to an audience because even he seems to know the Christians he speaks to are dumb enough to fall for whatever he's saying because they won't look into his past. And of course, you can expect conservatives to just pretend, oh, it's all hit jobs on him. They're all just trying to trash him because he's going to win. They'll never just say, yeah, it's true. I said I found Jesus, but I'm not really a Christian until now. Oh, you found a Holocaust tweet? You know what? I was a Christian after that. It just took 20 years. Oh, 30 years? Whatever it is, 30 years now. All right. What other questions we got? Wait, is he the same guy as the some people need to be killed guy? Yep, that's the dude. Mark Robinson said some people just need to be killed at a rally for right-wing extremists like this past summer. Same dude. He's just that horrible. He's so quotable too. Like even some Republicans are like, maybe I should keep my mouth shut for a little while so I don't say anything stupid. And Mark Robinson's like, just get me a microphone. I'll say anything you want. They do not care about being hypocritical. They only care about controlling the rest of us. Absolutely. And what I don't get is I get why Mark Robinson is like this, because if he lies, he gets to be governor, maybe. What I don't get are the Christians who are voting for him because they see him as the Christian candidate. He's not Josh Stein, if you know what they mean. They're all voting for him on the basis of his Christian morality or whatever, because if you're a Christian, you're good. And then these stories keep coming out. How many of these stories will it take before they decide, you know what? I can't vote for the Democrat, so I'm going to stay home. I can't bring myself to vote for the Republican. That at least would make sense to me. What I don't get are these people who are like, we need a good Christian in office, and then they vote for a dude like this. That doesn't make any sense. That's just people who don't care about anything, have no moral principles, nothing that they stand for. What does it say about the people who vote for this guy? They are so corrupt. And yet every time he's confronted on anything, it's always, they're just out to get me, conspiracy theories every time. No kidding. Again, it's not just one dude, it's the whole party, it's the whole right-wing ecosystem. I mean, you must have seen the news this week about like right-wing YouTubers who got paid $400,000, $500,000 for basically spreading Russian propaganda. And what are they saying now? Now that they've been caught and charged by the Department of Justice, they're like, they didn't tell me what to say. I would never take money like that. If you're making like $4,000 a month on YouTube, and then someone says, here's $400,000 a month, on YouTube, are you seriously not going to ask any questions about where this money's coming from? Because you're clearly not worth that much. Uh, but again, they don't care because they'll say anything you want them to say for the right price, or in Mark Robinson's case, for the power. Like, I don't care, whatever. Doesn't matter what my past is. I'll just say I'm the Christian one and I'll go overboard in talking about how Christian I am. Just don't look into my past. My first live stream. Welcome. Nice to see you. Oh, I want to say thank you for your channel. Thank you for being you. Also, hi, chat. Yes. Thanks for joining. Glad you could make it tonight. I appreciate it, Jerry. Congrats to Jess on her husband. Oh, my podcast co-host and her husband on the new gig. Very emotional hearing her talk about their last year. Yeah, she was having a rough year. Her husband was with job stuff, but he just got a new job. We're all very excited for them to just, you know what it's like if someone is looking for work and finally gets that job. Like, it brings structure to your life and gives you something to occupy your time with, and you're getting a steady paycheck. It's all well and good. So yeah, I'm really happy for it too. Thank you for being here. Yes, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff, and sign up right there at the newsletter. Give me 1 second to pull up some stuff that's not Mark Robinson. It's always nice when all the this is not safe for work stuff can be X'd out of. All right, I think I do. All right, here we go. Yeah, let's talk about Iowa. You all may remember, because I did live streams about this last winter, that remember that they had displays in the Iowa State Capitol last winter. And one of those displays came from the Satanic Temple. And it was like one of those big displays. Baphomet had the 7 tenets of Satanism that say, like, be nice to other people. And they had that display. Why did they have that display? Because there was a nativity scene that was also in the state capitol, and the Satanists really only respond like that in kind. They don't just start off saying, we want to put up a satanic monument. They say, oh, you're allowing a Christian one in here? Well, we want one too. So they did that. Governor Kim Reynolds, the Republican governor of Iowa, said that display was absolutely objectionable. And then, like a day or two before that display was set to come down, a Christian zealot named Michael Cassidy, he vandalized the entire thing, destroyed it. He has since been charged with the hate crime. But it's the Satanists who have basically been punished over this whole debacle. One Republican lawmaker even filed a bill earlier this year. Look at number 1, new section, satanic displays or the practice of Satanism on state property. The state, yada, 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 anyone who refers to Satan as a deity worships. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Number 1, the state or any political subdivision of the state shall not recognize organizations or individuals who refer to Satan as a deity, worship Satan, or who reference Satan or Satanism. This Republican wrote a bill that says the state will not do anything with Satanism. Basically, in theory, a law that would just say the state can't work with the Satanic Temple. Now, this bill, which would violate the First Amendment, didn't get anywhere. But this is the sort of thing Republicans have been doing in the wake of Satanists using an open forum at the state capitol building, right? They're already trying to prevent that from happening again this December. So that brings me to this proclamation that Kim Reynolds signed earlier this year. Check this out. It's incredible. I know it's small font. There's a lot of whereases here, but there's a lot of Jesus and God, and the Bible is amazing, yada, yada, yada. Who cares? Look at this one. Whereas the Bible is recognized as the one true revelation from God, showing the way of salvation, truth, and life, enriching the daily lives of millions of men and women. In the 1960s, the Bible was removed from our nation's schools. Like, I promise you, it wasn't. That's not what the Supreme Court said. That's not what's happened ever since. But, lying is okay if you're doing it for Jesus. But why are we doing this proclamation? Well, look at the bottom here. We get it. They love the Bible. Now, therefore, I, Kim Reynolds, governor of the state of Iowa, do hereby proclaim a week at the end of June and a week that is happening right now, September 4th through the 10th, 2024, as Iowa 99 County Bible Reading Marathon. They're doing every county in Iowa. She wants them to read the Bible. And she encourages all Iowans to join in this historical event to take place in front of all 99 courthouses. And furthermore, encourage individuals and families in Iowa to read through the Bible on a daily basis each year until the Lord comes. Like, Jesus Christ. Besides the fact that straight up reading the Bible straight through in a marathon fashion is boring as hell, not educational in any way. And also, why is the governor saying, yeah, this is all a great idea and you should all do it? Uh, that part is messed up. But I should say this is a proclamation. It's not a law. You can proclaim anything. Groups might say, hey, governor, can you proclaim this to be Nurses Day? And like governors just do that sort of thing. So on some level, this is kind of meaningless. Like Kim Reynolds can sign whatever she wants to sign. This one in particular is kind of weird because of what it's doing. But again, let's go back to what the Satanists do. They never start the fight, but they join the fight. So when they heard Kim Reynolds is sponsoring, essentially putting her stamp of approval on it, this week-long Bible reading that is happening, they said, well, then we want to do a marathon reading of sorts. And so they announced that they were going to do something just like this. This is what they posted on Facebook not that long ago. And the font is kind of ugly. I won't lie. Graphic design is not their thing. Not here. But you can see what the headline says. The Satanic Temple, Iowa's Paradise Lost Reading Marathon. And you can see at the very top, this September at the Iowa State Capitol Building Complex. And you can see some of this stuff here. Join us in the rotunda of the Iowa State Capitol building starting September 16th as we read John Milton's Paradise Lost from 1667 from start to finish. We would like to thank the Iowa 99 County Bible Reading Marathon, as well as our governor, Kim Reynolds, who have signed annual proclamations encouraging Iowans to read the Bible. And I think the last paragraph is important here. We are hopeful that this event will encourage Iowans to engage in respectful dialogue about religious liberty, plurality, and the importance of diverse perspectives. So again, you see that, and it's like, yeah, good for you. If they're going to hold Bible readings in front of every courthouse in every county in Iowa, then why not have like a week-long Paradise Lost marathon where you're reading a work of classical literature, right? It's fine. It's harmless. It's a way to push back, like, right? Not a big deal. So the Satanists, they filled out the proper paperwork for all this to make sure they have the permit to get in the Capitol and all that. They did that in early July. And then on July 26th, the same day that permit was like approved and placed on the calendar for the Capitol building's like calendar that's accessible on their website, the Iowa Department of Administrative Services announced it is changing its rules. Yep, they're totally changing their rules for who can use the Capitol space. And like, this is their website, the Iowa Capitol Complex Event Coordination. And you can see if you want to apply for space, it says, okay, review the calendar for availability. That makes sense. Second bullet point here, the event coordinator will create a memorandum of understanding. Well, that's the contract. And you can open up the contract and check out what the deal is. So I opened up the contract. So here is that contract, right? Memorandum of understanding between event requester and the state office. And I want you to look at one thing here. This, I thought it said it on here somewhere. Am I missing it? Maybe I am. Oh, no. Look at the bottom of this page right here. You could see this. It says revised July 26th, 2024, the same day they approved the Satanist request. Well, look back here. We're going to start with number 2. because this is what's interesting. This memorandum of use, whatever they call it, what do they say here? Look at the third line. An event may not exceed 1 day. That wasn't in the original contract. That is something that is only there now. So they changed the rules to say, oh, you want to hold a marathon reading event in the state capitol? Well, guess what? The rules now say an event can't exceed 1 day. And look at the last line, because we'll come back to this in a second. An event requester, including any affiliate, conduit, designee, partner, or subunit, may not hold more than one event per calendar year. Think about that for a second. So if the Satanists say we want to hold a Bible, not a Bible reading marathon, but a Paradise Lost reading marathon, they wanted to do it for like 4 days, 5 days. Well, now they can only do it for one. And even if the Satanists say, all right, we'll call your bluff. We're going to read Paradise Lost for 1 day. Well, that last line says, okay, fine, but then you don't get to put up a display in December in the Capitol because you've already used up your 1 time per year usage of our space. So that thing alone, let me show you one other thing. That's the new contract. Here's the old contract I want to show you. This was July 25th, apparently, and you could see number 2, duration. There is nothing about that stuff on here at all. It just says, yeah, duration. That's called time. It's from when your event starts to when it ends. They're done with this piece of paper. Now they want to block the Satanists, so they went back to this thing with all these excess rules that say only 1 day, and also you only get one chance a year to do this. So that's interesting. Doesn't say they're going after Satanists, but like you can read between the lines, right? And then there was one other. Oh, by the way, I was told by one source I spoke to that a group called the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers have already filled out the paperwork to put up a holiday display in the Capitol this December. But that application was apparently rejected. Why? Because the same Iowa group held a lobbying day in the Capitol earlier this year for their members. And that's a normal thing where you say, why don't our members come on down to the Iowa Capitol? We're going to see to it that you can meet with your elected officials and talk to them about the issues that matter to you. A lot of groups do this. It's not unusual. But the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers did that earlier in the year. So now Iowa officials are saying, oh, you did a lobbying day? Interesting. You don't get to put up a display in December because new rules, you only get one thing a year. Okay. I want to show you one other thing in this contract. It's at the very end of the whole thing. And I don't think this got a lot of attention, which is why I want to call your attention to it. Let me see if I could pull this up here. There's one more section at the end, which I feel this was not in the previous contract, but it's in here now. And it's long, but check this out. It's 5.15, additional limitation. And it says, because the Capitol complex is often a destination for children learning about their state government, visual displays, sounds, and other actions that are harmful to minors, including but not limited to obscene materials and gratuitous violence or gore, are not permitted at the Capitol complex. And then later on, what does it say? What do they mean by obscene material? It's any material depicting or describing the genitals, sex acts, masturbation, excretory functions, or sadomasochistic abuse, which the average person, taking the material as a whole and applying contemporary community standards with respect to what is suitable material for minors, would find appeals to the prurient interest and is patently offensive. Which, by the way, that right there says you can't have a Bible reading, because you know what's in the Bible? Sex acts, genitals, masturbation, a lot of very obscene content in the Bible. They also say at the end here that if we think it's offensive because taken as a whole, the material lacks serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value, you also don't get to have an event in the Capitol. But who gets to decide what's offensive? Is reading Paradise Lost offensive? because it's a work of classic literature. But if you're saying Satanists are doing this and maybe they're going to do a little show because they like getting attention, they're doing a whole show around it. Someone in the Iowa administration is going to say, you know what, that's offensive and we don't want you to be able to do that. Or they're going to say it's obscene and we don't want you to do that. Like, who gets to decide when something crosses the line? I have no idea, but that's a new rule as well. And I did reach out, by the way, to Iowa administration officials to say who does get to decide what's obscene, what's offensive. They did not get back to me. So, bottom line here is that when the Satanists were just planning to read Paradise Lost, this rule change effectively stops them from doing anything in the Capitol that could be seen as offensive to basically anybody because of how vaguely those statutes are defined. So the Satanists then said in a press release later on that we're still doing this. They said we're going to do it on a different place, at a different time, but we're still doing our marathon. But here's the other side to the story. Now you see what Iowa is trying to do to stop Satanists from taking part here. Like, they changed the rules to prevent Satanists from doing their thing. Now, I'm going to come back to that story in a second, but I want to show you this. Check out this headline from a year ago, this year. Look at the date right here, September 17th, 2023. Event in Des Moines helps people experiencing homelessness. And just look at the beginning of this story. A community event this weekend, helped more than 1,200 local people in need. Organizers with the Des Moines Homeless Veterans Stand Down providing the little things such as free clothing, haircuts, and meals can make a difference for people in need. Basically, some nonprofit group in Iowa said, we want to help veterans, we want to help people who have no home, no permanent home, and we want to give them things they may not be able to afford, haircuts, food, things like that. We can connect them, make it a job fair, especially for veterans who are looking for work. Let's connect them with local employers. And it was so successful that 1,200 people came through. Amazing. That is incredible. Like, what a wonderful organization to be doing all that. Well, guess what? This year, the same group said, instead of doing it wherever the hell we did it, why don't we do it in the Iowa State Capitol? Big space, central location. We can get a lot of people there. And it's like, it's in the Capitol. It's meaningful to have people come here looking for help, especially if you're a veteran. So they made plans to reserve space in the Iowa Capitol for several days to host one of these events this year. And you know where I'm going with this story now, because after the rule change to stop the Satanists from having their event, it also turns out that the new rules prevent the Veterans Nonprofit Group from doing their event too. And this is also, let me show you this. It's from the local news as well. This is from the event organizer. Event organizer Nick Lemo said set up alone exceeds the allowed time. It takes them more than a day to put up the tables, get everyone there. And even if the event could be ready, one day is not enough time for visitors to connect with organizations attending without missing other opportunities at the event. Like, basically, the Iowa administration kicked out the homeless veterans group so they can't help people, all to stick it to Satanists. Look at the headline here. We're just scrambling. Resource fair to assist homeless and the veterans threatened by state policy change. Like, how awful is it that those guys are scrambling to find a new venue? The bottom line here is that Iowa Republicans were so desperate to stop Satanists from reading a book in the state capitol that they ended up hurting homeless veterans looking for a job. That's what the Iowa Republican Party is doing. They do not care who they hurt. They do not care who is caught in the crossfire, as long as they can tell their bosses, I guess, that they won some culture war battle. I guess that's what this is about. And I haven't heard any sympathy. It's not like Iowa's come back and said, well, we'll make an exception for the veterans group, which would be illegal, by the way, if you're saying they can come in, but the Satanists can't. But no one from the state so far has said anything about it. You know who has expressed sympathy for the homeless veterans? Only one group, as far as I could tell, involved in this whole thing, and it's the Satanists. This is what they said. This is from a press release from the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple of Iowa would like to express our support to Iowa's unhoused population who have been unfairly targeted by this policy change, which we believe occurred due to the Iowa state government's unwillingness to respect diverse perspectives and religious freedom. So the Satanists are still the voices of reason here. And the state's not doing anything. I did ask Lucian Greaves, who is the co-founder of the Satanic Temple, what else he had to say about all this. This is what he told me. I'll read this to you. To now see homeless veterans potentially denied resources due to the simple pettiness of officials whose sole purpose in doing so is to limit religious expression that does not match their own should be an absolute outrage to any decent person, regardless of their religious beliefs. He's right. Again, I don't know what Iowa plans to do about this, but do you really think this hurts the Satanists? They've already rescheduled their reading. It's happening at a courthouse in a different part of the state, but they're going to do it. So they didn't stop them from reading. They just stopped them temporarily from coming into the Capitol building. And by the way, they can still put up now a satanic display this December because they haven't used their one-day slot yet. So they will get 1 day to, I guess, scare the bejesus out of everyone with the Baphomet statue. So that'll happen this December. But just, cut off your nose, spite your face sort of thing where, all right, homeless veterans are screwed over. We don't care. We're Iowa Republicans. Just pathetic. But that is what has happened this week. I'm going to pause there for some questions before I get to the next story. Thanks for the donation, Elizabeth. For those who want to know about Paradise Lost but have not read it, Overly Sarcastic Productions on YouTube has a great vid. I don't even know what you're referring to, but now I'm very curious. You should all go check out Overly Sarcastic Productions after this live stream and not a second before watching you. Thank you for that. At this point, Iowa should just not allow any public displays of any kind because they will never figure out how to comply with the Constitution. That is an option for them. They could totally say, we're just going to close up shop in December. Everyone go home. No displays whatsoever. That would keep it fair. Or they could allow everyone to come in, which is their current plan. But then if they do that, they can't get mad when a Satanist group participates or an atheist group participates. And they should have security there to make sure, non-Christian groups' displays don't get vandalized. Again, the options here are not complicated. They got to pick one. Just make a whole lot of affiliated but distinctly separate groups and then flood them with events. They should. How fun would that be? That is a good idea. I like that. I've just had it with the right-wing religious wing of this country thinking they are the be-all that ends all in this country. Yeah, vote accordingly, especially if you are in a swing state. My God, do not let these people get more power because this is what they do when they get any power. They use it to shove out everybody else no matter what. This is not a one-time event. Subscribe, like for free, subscribe to the newsletter. Thank you so much. Let me pull up this next story here. I think you will enjoy this one as well. This one is not depressing at all. Okay. Guess what? Teaching evolution is still legal in Indiana. I know you had doubts, but it's still legal. And I know that because a judge had to rule on that in recent weeks. There was what happened is that over a year ago, a Christian couple, their names are Jason and Jennifer Reinl, they filed a lawsuit against their school district. Let me show you this right here. These two, Jennifer, Jason Reinl, and their daughter, Sarah, they sued the Penn Harris Madison School Corporation, which is a public school district, and the school board, and a state official, wanting a jury trial And they did it because they said, how dare our school district teach evolution to kids? That actually happened. This couple has 4 kids who have already graduated. They have the 5th one who is actually very young and not in high school yet, but that 5th child is eventually going to attend Penn High School. And so the Reynolds, let's call them Reynolds, they were very concerned that their 5th child was going to learn about any of this stuff. And I want to show you the specific line in this thing because it's, I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to just paraphrase. Look at number 14. Penn High School teaches, in accordance with Indiana Department of Education guidelines, the state-sponsored, atheistic, religious, what? Theory of evolution and the state-sponsored, atheistic, religious Big Bang theory under the guise that they are science, in quote, scare quotes. First of all, I don't know how something can be atheistic and religious. I know what they're trying to do there, but still. But the whole idea is that evolution and the Big Bang, oh, they're science? No, 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 no. You can't teach that to my child. Like, this is like page 3 of the lawsuit. Any reasonable person reading this lawsuit should have been like, oh, these people are crazy, like, real quickly. And the reason they said all this stuff, let me show you this page right here. Look at number 16. How do we know this is false? This statement was made with the knowledge that the theory of evolution breaks many other scientific laws and theories, as well as defies observation, since no species, as that term is scientifically defined, has ever been observed to change into another new species. And let's just pause there for a second. These people think that evolution says one animal can give birth to a brand new species. And we've never seen that happen, so evolution is false, even though that's not how evolution works, and none of that makes any sense. No one has ever said that's how evolution works. The people who think you just like give birth and it's a new species, that's limited to like Ken Ham and the other people who don't understand evolution, because that's not what scientists say at all. So these people don't know what evolution is, but they're like, we haven't seen the lie that I just made up here, so it must be false. This definition also carefully avoids stating that the original organism from which all others had to have descended had to have arisen spontaneously, which in itself violates scientific laws. No, that's also not what evolution says. Evolution doesn't get into how it all began necessarily. It doesn't poof into existence. The building blocks have to be there. Again, I'm not an expert. The difference is I'm not pretending to be one. These people know nothing, but they're pretending to be experts, right? But look at this. It goes on. Most scientists, when presented with the arguments contained within this complaint, admit that the theory of evolution is highly flawed as a scientific theory. However, they have been indoctrinated with it while attending public schools and universities, so they are reluctant to abandon this religious teaching. Yeah, most scientists, when presented with this evidence, admit the theory of evolution is highly flawed. Who? Where are the scientists? I scrolled in looking for the footnote, and there are no footnotes on this page. No citation. They just say most scientists know evolution is fake, and no citations. None whatsoever. So this is the lawsuit. This is what they're saying. They say evolution has been scientifically disproven, which, sorry, it has not been. That is news to everybody. Where is that part? Scientific. I want to see if I could find that here. I don't know where that line went, but it wasn't here. And so anyway, what do they say about the Big Bang Theory? They say the lawsuit spends so many pages rehashing Christian ignorance about the topic before just basically saying out loud, this never happened. We know it never happened. There are references to Newton's first law, the Hubble Space Telescope, the all of thermodynamics, and they go on to say geological dating and the fossil record are hoaxes. And ultimately, what they argue is that their kids were taught these things as if they were true, and that violates their religious beliefs. That's how bad this stuff gets. I want to see if I can find one thing in here so I can show it to you. And it's not coming up for me for some reason, so I'm going to try it this way. This is a section in the lawsuit. Check this out. Later on in the lawsuit, this is where they explain this is how it harms them as a family. During the 2018-19 school year, Sarah Reinhold was a ninth grade student at Penn High School. That means she graduated already. She's not even in school anymore. She was taught the atheist theory of evolution as if it were scientific truth, including but not limited to the above guidelines, which are against her religious beliefs as a Christian. Because apparently her religious beliefs are you have to lie to me all the time. That's my religion. And then they say, during the 2019-20 school year, another one of their kids was a ninth grader at Penn High School, which means he's also graduated now. He was also taught the atheist theory of evolution as if it were a scientific truth, and it violates our religious beliefs. This goes on for a while. You get the point. So, let's say that's true. Who cares? Those kids graduated. They're not affected by this anymore. I'm not sure why we're talking about this at all. This is the last little bit I wanted to share with you here from the lawsuit. Look at this. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So this is what this family does. They're very mad about all this. They say it violated their constitutional rights. And I mean, I think part of me is surprised that I learned how good it is to be a Christian in a red state, because their best example of religious persecution and discrimination is that the teachers in their kids' public school try to teach them things. And they're so mad about that they're filing a lawsuit because they sued everybody, the district, the school board, the head of the Indiana Department of Education, because they think teaching science violates their First Amendment rights. They also said teaching evolution means endorsing the specific religious viewpoints and beliefs of atheists. They also said teaching science violates state law because it uses state funds to promote a sectarian education. Which is weird also because usually that's the thing Christians like. They like religious education. But these people are like, they're teaching atheism by teaching evolution. And that means they're teaching religion, and they shouldn't be teaching religion. We don't like it when people teach religion. That's not our religion. So anyway, in addition to demanding, what do they want out of all this? They demanded that the courts declare the teaching of evolution be unconstitutional. They wanted the removal of all literature and media promoting or describing evolution to be removed off the shelves. They also want money because they've suffered immense harm throughout all of this. And by the way, they represented themselves in court because I think even in Indiana, you can't find a lawyer dumb enough to take on a case like this. So recently, this week, a judge finally ruled on this matter. And what did the judge say? She tossed out the lawsuit. She decided not to rule on the merits, but look at this. I love this line in the judge's response. Despite the family's assertions to the contrary, the purported similarities between evolution and atheism do not render the teaching of evolution in public schools violative of the Establishment Clause, which in English basically says just because there's overlap between evolution and atheism doesn't mean they are teaching atheism and violating the Establishment Clause. Like, just because science and reality overlap doesn't mean they're doing something wrong. That's your problem, basically, said this judge. I will say, the judge, Sarah Evans Barker, federal judge, she never gets into the science. She's not writing some long thing about why all their assertions about evolution and the Big Bang Theory are wrong. She just kind of argues that this family has no business filing the lawsuit. There's no evidence their daughter, who is one of the plaintiffs, who took those classes and graduated, there's no evidence she faces any risk of harm, the judge said. And even if the family thinks teaching evolution amounts to atheism, who cares? That's not the basis for a legal argument. Just because there's overlap doesn't mean teaching one is the same as teaching another. And we could look at this in another light. Pretend your kid took a sociology class and it taught them that friendships are good for your mental health. Well, guess what? There's a lot of Christian youth pastors who might say the same thing. It doesn't mean that teaching kids friendships are good is an endorsement of Christianity and what those youth group leaders are saying. Just because one thing that is being taught overlaps with a thing that shouldn't be taught doesn't mean something illegal is happening. You know what I mean? So it looks like this lawsuit is dead. I don't know if the family plans to appeal. I can't imagine that'll go over well. It does tell you, wow, when you have a lot of time and a lot of money to waste, crazy people can do anything. But I was looking this lady up. I was trying to figure out more about this family, why they filed the lawsuit and all that. And one thing I really enjoyed reading about, I forgot I wrote about this lady a couple years ago. I have written entire articles about this lady. Why? Because in 2021, she sued the CDC, Krispy Kreme, Sephora, the makeup place, AMC Theaters, Dr. Fauci, and a whole bunch of government agencies because she felt that mask mandates during the pandemic discriminated against her. And my favorite part of that lawsuit was one particular section where she explains why Krispy Kreme deserves to be like the subject of this lawsuit. And we're going to read this together because it's glorious. Okay. Um, Someone, I think in her family, requested Krispy Kreme donuts. Jennifer Reinl went to the Krispy Kreme store where there was an extremely long drive through line that wrapped around the building and did not appear to be moving. There were only 2 people in line inside the store. Next section. Jennifer Reinl was forbidden entry into the store without a mask. She explained to the store manager she had a medical disability and could not wear a mask, but was still denied entry. Next section. Jennifer Reinl, having promised her daughter donuts, retreated to the car. This is the hero we need. She returned to the car, donned a mask, and waited in line in the store for 10 minutes to get the donuts. She had an asthma attack in the store as a result of wearing the mask. Store employees, including the manager, were unconcerned she was having an asthma attack. They told her she had the option of going through the drive-thru if she did not want to wear a mask. They told her that going through the drive-thru was an acceptable accommodation. Like, my God, this lady is a human nightmare. Just go through the drive-thru, lady. My God. So she filed that lawsuit, and that's just the section against Krispy Kreme. Like, she just needs everyone to accommodate her, doesn't give a damn who might get hurt as a result of her selfishness, which is true of all those people who refuse to abide by mask mandates. And by the way, while there were medical exemptions to mask mandates in certain places during the pandemic, no one has to go to Krispy Kreme. Sorry, that's a choice she made. Who cares if her daughter wanted some donuts? Go get them somewhere else. Jesus Christ. So, this lawsuit was also dismissed, surprise, as it should have been. But in that particular case, the judge did not hold back. And this is just, oh, it's beautiful. You love reading a judge's decision like this. Look at this from the Krispy Kreme lawsuit. Holistically, Miss Reinl's complaints have been unintelligible due to their length, excess and impertinent information and exhibits, arguments made rather than facts pleaded, tangential mentions of liability under numerous constitutional provisions, statutes, and agency rules, and the joinder of mostly unrelated claims against 16 defendants. That's judge speak for what the hell is this lady doing? She doesn't know how to file a complaint. And if she's not going to take it seriously, I'm not going to take it seriously. Which, I mean, I think the bottom line here is that she has been hindered in her attempts to use Christianity as immunity against everything. She's been hindered by the fact that she's really dumb. Like, she's being hindered by her own ignorance. Now, keep in mind, though, all it takes is one right-wing judge to use her lawsuits as a green light to do whatever they want, and like she could create the chaos she is seeking. So far, it hasn't worked, but it doesn't mean that these frivolous lawsuits won't get taken seriously by somebody. Like, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it can't in the future. All right, I'm going to pause there for now. What questions we got here? Are these laymen? They just accidentally defined a kind. Rookie level mistake. I think you're referring to the way she described evolution in her lawsuit. Yeah, I don't know if she has any specialized knowledge. I don't know if she has a degree in any of this stuff, but she's very much using the Ken Ham playbook of explaining evolution, which is to say it's wrong. Like, just like creationists don't understand evolution, and every time they try to explain it, they make a fool of themselves. That's what she's doing. She doesn't know how it works. So when she explains it, everyone who understands it is like, that's not what evolution is. What are you talking about? This is such silly nonsense. Evolutionary theory is the underpinning of all modern biology, says the biologist, Joe. Yeah, no kidding. And everyone who's taken a biology class knows it's like the glue that holds together all of biology as well. You know who doesn't know that? The people who don't get evolution, don't get science, but really hate science. What other questions? Who even represented them? Nobody. Yeah, like I said, no lawyer took them seriously. Though there are a lot of dumb lawyers out there, but no, this family represented themselves. It's a pro se lawsuit. Keep your eyes on Wadsworth, Ohio. They're doing something similar to how the LDS let their kids go to seminary before school or during study halls and or lunch. I think you were talking about the what's the group called? Life I can't remember what you're talking about, but the public schools are allowed to let kids get off the premises for like an hour a week, maybe an hour a day, to go get religious education. LifeWise, that's the name of the group. And Ohio, very LifeWise is like centered in Ohio, and they're very much saying, "Hey, parents, if you allow your kids to be released, we'll take them to a local church. We will do that. We'll take care of everything for you. We'll bring them back, and guess what? It's legal." So now you have a bunch of kids leaving the school day legally to go get religious education, and there's not much school districts can do about it. I think that's what you're talking about. I have covered that in other videos in the past, by the way, if you look through my archives or something. But yeah, it's not even before school. It is during study halls and or lunch or during elective periods and things like that. It's troubling because it's spreading. All right, sign up at the newsletter. Go do it. I'm gonna skip ahead here. Let me pull up the next story. Oh, we got a lot of interesting, fun news today. I forgot. Usually it's all very depressing, but today there's some good stuff here. Um, yeah, let's talk about this. So I talked about this not that long ago, but like every presidential election year, I said before, like there are surveys about electability. And the question that Gallup has asked for decades now amounts to, would you vote for a well qualified person from your political party if that person happened to be blank? And I just want to show you, I know I did this like a week or two ago, but let me show you this from Gallup this year. Okay. And again, this particular poll was taken when Joe Biden was in the race. But you could see, would you vote for a woman? And almost, 93% of Americans say, yeah, I have no problem voting for a woman from my political party if I thought that person was qualified for president. Like Democrats and Republicans, fine. Would you vote for a Hispanic person? Most people say yes. Catholic, sure. Black person, sure. Jewish person, yeah, 88%. And as you go down the list, this is not surprising. Gay and lesbian, you see Muslim, you see, would you vote for someone over the age of 70? And it gets low, and you could see even lower. Would you vote for someone over the age of 80, Joe Biden? And the answer is like really not good if you're Joe Biden. But you also see atheist on this list. It's at 60%. That's the point I want to make right now. 60% is so much higher than it used to be decades ago, and that's a good thing. But also, you could see it's very low on the list I mean, we're still beating Bernie Sanders technically because socialist is under us, but atheists are at 60%, and that's not great. If you're an atheist, open about it, who is hoping to run for public office, maybe not president, but something close to that. But you get the idea. Being an atheist tends to be a political liability, right? Um, and so the reason I bring all this up is I've always seen that poll at the national level. Would you vote for a president if that person happened to be an atheist? I don't recall ever seeing a state level version of that kind of question. And last month, I finally got to see one of those. Last month, a group called DHM Research surveyed 500 people in the state of Washington. And they asked them questions like the one I just showed you. They asked them, how do you feel about various political groups? How do you feel about gun owners, immigrants, trans people, etc.? And they asked them to rank how they felt about those groups on a scale of 0, which means you hate them, to 100, which means you love them, right? So, like, just what do you think about them? Not would you vote for them, just what do you think about them? Do you like them? Do you hate them, love them, whatever? And look, Washington State is a relatively blue state. Maybe not the eastern side of it, but like a good chunk of Washington State is very blue. So it won't surprise you to learn they felt pretty warm towards Democrats more so than Republicans. They were not necessarily fond of gun owners. They really love, however, rural Washingtonians. So, okay, all that's not surprising. But I wanted to show you this one part of the survey, okay? And I'm going to blow this up. I tried to highlight these things. Look at what they said about Republicans. And they're at the top of the list first here. How do you feel toward the following groups? Republicans, the average right over here is 44.6. Remember, it's a scale from 0 to 100. 100 means you love them, 0 means you hate them. And look at the way it's broken up there. 0 to 20, 34% of Washingtonians said Republicans, yeah, they're from 0 to a 20. I really hate them. 34% of people put them in that category. And I have to imagine if you're going from 0 to 20, we're probably giving zeros. We're probably giving single digits there. So a third of Washington said, yeah, I really hate Republicans. How many people really loved Republicans? Because, like, who's lukewarm? You know what I mean? 17%, right above my head here, top row, 17% said, yeah, I pretty much love Republicans. That's not surprising, even though most people hate them in Washington. Look at the 40 to 60 section in the middle there. 15% are like, meh. Which is kind of funny because, like, who the hell are these 15% who are like Republicans? I don't have much of an opinion on them. They're fine sometimes. Like, I don't know. I don't know anyone in my life who doesn't have strong opinions about that party in particular. So that's kind of interesting to me. But, like, people love or hate Republicans, but by and large, their average is 44.6. Okay, now I'm going to remove myself here so you can see the atheist column. Atheists are at 50.1. So average isn't great. It's still low on the list. But look, how many people hate us? Only 21%. How many people love us? 15%. A lot of people in Washington, however, put atheists in the 34% box right over here. We're from 40 to 60 degrees. A third of people in Washington say, on atheists, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I like some, I hate some, whatever. I'm in the middle. So it's a very interesting distribution there. A lot of people have, mediocre feelings about atheists. When it comes to Republicans, they either hate them or love them, and they mostly hate them. But I found it really fascinating that in the state of Washington, people dislike Republicans a lot more than they dislike atheists. That part right there is fascinating and new. And it led to this headline. This is in the Seattle Times right here. Never thought I'd see it. There's now a group less popular than atheists. And this is such a fun article to read here. This is from Danny Westneat, who is a Seattle Times columnist. But check this out. Republicans, take it from me. If you're below the atheists, You are having a major brand perception crisis. Republicans were perceived relatively poorly across the board by women and men, rich and poor, young and old, the poll found. Republicans did best in eastern Washington, no surprise there, it touches Idaho, and worst in King County, where 37% gave them the iciest ranking. Like, yep, they're not doing so hot across the state. That's interesting. He went on to say in his article that several Republicans on the ballot in Washington this November, they might actually be electable. They're not MAGA cultists. They are the sort of people who could presumably earn votes across the political spectrum, win a lot of independent voters, maybe some Democrats. They're the sort of people who could win those races. But the stench of being a Republican could doom their chances of winning. Like, at the very least, the R next to their names on the ballot, it hurts them more than it helps them. And Westneat basically wrote, it suggests the party is again staggering toward a shutout in all 9 statewide campaigns. He also wrote this. He's trying to explain why is this happening, and this is what he wrote. The reasons for this, the reasons for why they hate Republicans more than atheists, were not explored. My sense, which I've stated repeatedly in this space, is that the complete takeover of the party by Donald Trump and his MAGA movement has made it toxic to the lion's share of voters here. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, he's totally ruined the Republican brand. Yeah, there's a very large group of Republicans who love Donald Trump, but for normal people and the rest of us, like, no, I'm never going to vote for a Republican as far as I can in the foreseeable future. I can say that for myself because I know what that party stands for, which is nothing, never anything good. You know what I mean? This guy goes on to also write in the same piece. This is interesting. He mentioned there is a Senate candidate in Washington who could actually win a race. But check this out. There it is. Consider how this suffocates someone like Garcia, the promising GOP Senate candidate. He is refusing to endorse Trump, which he deserves some credit for because somebody had to start the separation, but it's also too little too late. Due to his own party's cult-like fealty, he's got Trump wrapped around his neck anyway, and it's sinking him along with all the others. That local Republicans have been so willing to destroy themselves and their up-and-coming candidates in the service of this one man is one of the most baffling, imponderable things I've ever witnessed. It's so inexplicable, it almost feels religious. And like, you know what? He says it's inexplicable. I'll give it a shot. I'll give the explanation a shot. People used to fear atheists, I think, because they didn't know any. And they relied on negative stereotypes about them. Their fear was rooted in ignorance. If there was a great candidate, however, who happened to be an atheist, I think you would see those favorability numbers jump high pretty quickly. I think for a lot of people who might have been scared to support an openly gay candidate, then Pete Buttigieg comes along and he's harmless and he's really smart. And it's like, you know what? The fact that he's gay doesn't bother me. I would vote for him. That's the sort of thing that can happen if you have an atheist candidate. That stigma against being an atheist, like, it's not going to go away, but it could decrease, right? But when it comes to Republicans, there is no ignorance about who they are and what they represent. Like, people see exactly what Trump says. They see what the GOP platform says. They see what Project 2025 says. And they're largely rejecting it, at least so far as we've seen in midterm elections and whatnot, because it's not the future they want. Trump isn't a guy who just happens to be a Republican. He's a Republican who happens to be an awful human being. And all these other Republicans are like, yeah, I want in on that. And the party has elevated him to the top of their ticket for 3 straight presidential elections because he represents who they are and where they want to go. Like, you better believe that is off-putting to voters, certainly in a blue state like Washington. I mean, like I said, the thing that stuck out to me in that survey is that only 15% of respondents in that survey they were lukewarm on Republicans compared to the 34% who were lukewarm on atheists, because these people have very strong feelings about Republicans, even if they haven't always formed their opinions about atheists one way or the other. And about half of residents who have thought about Republicans dislike them in that survey, far more than the Washingtonians who like them. I liked a comment that was made under that Seattle Times column. Someone wrote Republicans would still be the underdogs if Trump wasn't on the ballot, but his presence drags everybody down who is a Republican. Like the atheists are probably not going to, those numbers are not going to change without a specific candidate to pull them up. But it is hard to imagine the Republican support increasing from where it's been stuck for several years without Trump loosening his grip on the party. And he's not going to do that because he needs the party to avoid jail and lawsuits and to keep the grift going. You know what I mean? So, as I shared in a video like last week, given the incredible number of openly non religious candidates at the state level, once some of them trickle up into national politics and people just get used to the idea of an atheist politician, I think it'll become even less of a concern. But it does strike me as really funny that atheism used to be one of the biggest taboos in politics, being openly non religious. And now I would much rather be an atheist than a Republican, depending on where I'm running, because there's a chance being a Republican just turns off so many more people. And as an atheist, I feel good about that. All right, I'm going to pause there for a bit. I got one more story for you after this. Nice to know my atheism is less of a problem than my socialism, I guess. Absolutely. And actually, if Bernie was the presidential candidate, I suspect a lot of people would turn out to, once they realize what socialism is, not what you hear about on Fox News, but the democratic socialism that like Bernie Sanders and AOC espouse, like they'd be thinking, oh, that actually sounds fine. One of these days we'll be in the majority. Sadly, I'll be dead by then. There is hope though. You know what? I disagree. We will be in the majority. Demographically speaking, the nuns are rising, and I think we will become the majority soon. I don't know when. Maybe it'll take a little while, but I don't think it's one of those like it'll take several decades before we're in the majority. I think organized religion is losing. And the fact that evangelical Christians, conservative Catholics have also latched on to Donald Trump just makes the exodus out of those denominations as well. That's going to happen even faster because again, Trump is toxic and everything attached to Trump becomes toxic. You don't want to be a part of it. You're either in the cult or you want nothing to do with the cult. And so I don't know. I don't get why so many pastors are like, no, Trump is great. We're totally going to vote for him because I think it's bad for them strategically. But that's what they're doing. I don't know. I'm glad they're not listening to my advice, I guess. Maybe soon Republicans will start hiding in the closet. Oh, you know what? That's not even a joke. I absolutely believe that. At some point, Trump will not be around anymore. And what you're going to find then is all these people who used to be Republicans who come out and say, well, I never really supported Donald Trump. And then we're all going to be like, but we have evidence. Here's the video of you saying Trump is the best. And they're going to be like, no, I just kind of had, I didn't really believe any of that. All that gaslighting is going to happen the second Trump is away from them and cannot do them any more harm. But for the foreseeable future, like, even if something happens to Trump, guess what? His kids are around. And I've seen other people say this. Like, who do you think the presumptive Republican presidential candidate's going to be in 2028? If it's not Donald Trump, it's going to be one of his dumb sons, maybe Ivanka. Like, you know what I mean? The family has taken over the party, and elected Republicans have not shown any signs of moving past him or the name, the family name. So good, make them hide in the closet. They should be ashamed of themselves. It's not too late to do it now. I mean, my God, Dick Cheney is voting for Kamala Harris. Liz Cheney is voting for Kamala Harris and Colin Allred in Texas. If those people can do it, what is stopping all these other Republicans from doing it? They don't have to be this bad, even when they're awful. But I don't know. They're still jumping on board the sinking ship. Yeah. Like and subscribe. Thank you. I got one last story for y'all. Let me just pull this up. This is more pictures than anything, but I wanted to show you these. Yeah, here we go. So there is a nonprofit research group called PRRI, and they just released the findings from this massive survey they do. It's called the Census of American Religion. And it kind of gives us a snapshot of what people believe and where they live all across the country, like at a county by county level. And like I said, that's unlike most of the surveys you see because this one gets really granular and it tells you about like religious diversity and all things like that. PRRI says their report offers the quote, most comprehensive resource available on religious diversity in America. So, what are the big takeaways? I want to show you this chart first because this is fascinating to me. Look at this one right here. You can see at the top, this is the American religious landscape in 2023. And there are some fascinating things going on here. Look at that pinkish on the upper left, like 10 o'clock at night. 27% of people, I have to remove myself here, 27% of people are unaffiliated. 27%, a quarter of the country, they say, has no religious affiliation. And check this out. If you look at like, I'm going to try to do this with my fingers here, like the 1 o'clock, the dark blue, and the next light blue after that, those are white evangelical Protestants, white mainline Protestants, and then white Catholics right underneath that. But according to this pie chart, the percentage of nuns, 27%, is larger than the percentage of white evangelicals and white mainline Protestants. They're only at 26% total. Nuns now outnumber white Protestants in this country. That is huge. That's never happened before. And it wasn't like that, like with the last time they did this survey years ago. So we are gaining primarily at their expense. Those former white evangelicals, white Protestants, they're coming to the side of, I want nothing to do with organized religion. So that's pretty damn amazing. In 2020, by the way, the percentage of white Protestants who are evangelical and mainline were 23% and 30%. So, like, not only are they shrinking, we're getting all their numbers. All right. White Christians overall now stand at 41%, which is actually a drop from 44% a few years ago. Let me show you a different version of the same information that is in this chart right here. This is the decline of white Christian subgroups. So again, same kind of chart. I'll remove myself from here. That pink line at the very top right, you could see those are the nuns. There are more of us today than ever before. The unaffiliated group, we are now at 27.4%, where you could see white evangelicals, white mainline Protestants, white Catholics, their numbers keep going down and down and down overall, to the point where even if you start adding them up, we are outnumbering them. That is incredible. We just keep gaining at their expense. Seriously, you should rewind this video and just stare at that chart. I will point out one thing, going back to that for a second. You could see there's a little jump at the bottom right, like 16.4. What is that? In 2020, during the pandemic, yeah, some people found religion suddenly. But ever since then, it's been back to the trend of people leaving organized religion once again. And I know this is obvious to most of you, but when it says unaffiliated, that means atheists, agnostics, nothing in particular. The same survey said 5% of America, they're atheists, 5% are agnostics, 17% are nothing in particular. Now, another thing I would say about those numbers is that everything is self-reported in this survey. People told the researchers they were evangelical or Muslim or unaffiliated. And I would suspect then that the non-religious numbers are actually underreported because a lot of Americans still feel a stigma when it comes to admitting they have no religious faith. So I think there's a lot of people, if you ask them, what religion are you? Or like, what religious label do you use, if any? They would say, I'm Christian. What type? Just regular Christian. Like they don't want to say they doubt God. They think there's something wrong with that. So they don't say unaffiliated. They definitely don't say atheist. They might just say, well, whatever religion I was raised in, even if they have doubt. So that 27%, I think that's an undercount. So that's interesting. What else was in this survey? Check this out. Americans 30 to, this is by age. Same thing. Look at this. Of the unaffiliated, look at the difference between Americans in 2013 and in 2023. So we have a decade difference here. And across all ages, look at the difference between the blue lines from a decade ago to the green lines today. And what this shows you is in every age breakdown, more people have become religiously unaffiliated. And the biggest jump happened between the ages of 30 and 49. A decade ago, that group was only 23% non-religious. Now it's 34% non-religious. So doesn't matter your age. I'll let you see that again. It doesn't matter what age you are. Like, people are shifting away from organized religion across the board. Fascinating as well. PRRI does not get into the why is this happening, but I would argue that that 30 to 49 cohort, that's probably the group most impacted by Republicans taking away their reproductive rights. That's the group that has maybe suffered the greatest whiplash when it comes to seeing civil rights progress acquired and then rescinded because of right-wing judges. They are the people who came of age at a time when religion has only ever been a tool of oppression. 30 to 49, that's the age group that like bore witness to the Catholic Church sex scandals and all the reporting that came out about it. So like you can imagine, yeah, that group doesn't necessarily have a lifelong affinity to the Catholic Church. When they read about that stuff, they're like, why am I a part of this? I want out. When they see what George W. Bush did with his religion, and obviously what Trump did by using religion, they're like, I don't want to be a part of this. So I can try to theorize as to why they're leaving. Here's another thing to show you. I love charts, and this whole report was so interesting. I was in nerd heaven for this. This is interesting. Even though younger Americans are less religious than any other age group, this actually shows that they're more diverse than any other group. So we're going to look at the far left column here. But look at this. Look at how many different colors are represented in that age group. Like the bottom pink, it's bigger for the far left group, the 18 to 29 group, because there's more unaffiliateds in the younger generation. That's not surprising. But at the same time, there's a lot of Black Protestants, a lot of Hispanic Protestants, white Catholics. Like there's a bigger mix. Whereas compared to the column on the right, which is 65 or older, those non-traditional religions are like little slivers. The blues kind of take up the big chunk, whether it's white evangelicals, Protestants, Lutherans, white Catholics. They kind of dominate the 65 or older group. However, on the far left column, you see growth in the smaller religious groups, whereas those big popular Christian groups get smaller and smaller. So I find that diversity very interesting as well. One color doesn't really dominate that far left column. There are more Christians of every stripe, more religious people from non-traditional backgrounds. And I wonder if that will have massive political repercussions down the line, because we know the Republican Party in particular has a bad habit, or if you want to call it a strategy, of speaking to all Americans as if they are all Christians of the same stripe. That is the way they campaign, right? We're all conservative Christians who hate abortion and the gays. But as you could see, not every American is that kind of Christian. And certainly with younger Americans, they are not all that kind of Christian, which suggests those arguments are not going to have as much sway as they used to. So what do you think is going to happen? Are Republicans going to change strategy? Or are they just going to double down on the horrible things they do? Well, if history is any indication, they're always just going to double down. They don't change for the better. That's not what the Republicans do. On the flip side, what are Democrats looking like? This is interesting too. Look at this chart right here. This is religious affiliation by party and age. Look at the very bottom of this chart. This is the Republicans. And you could see, there's a big chunk of Republicans who are white evangelical Protestants. And at the far right, there's a very small chunk of Republicans who are religiously unaffiliated. Now go to the very top line, the one that's way up there. That's the Democrats. And you can see Democrats consist of a whole bunch of religiously unaffiliated people and a very small sliver of white evangelicals. But now look at those four middle rows right there, because now we're breaking it down by age. And you could see what's happening here. If you go to the second line from the bottom, 65 or older, that looks closer to Republicans than Democrats. But look at the age 18 to 29. That looks a lot more like Democrats than Republicans. And what does that teach us? That suggests the future of America looks a lot more like the Democratic Party. And that means Democrats are going to have, if they're smart anyway, they'll have an easier time speaking to that group of people. Whereas Republicans, by tailoring their message to a very small, shrinking group of Americans, are going to have a harder and harder time trying to connect with people. So that's a really interesting thing as well. As PRRI explained this, the religious makeup of Democrats generally resembles that of younger Americans ages 18 to 29. The Republican religious breakdown is more akin to the religious makeup of senior Americans over 65. And then they added, notably, no age group is as white and Christian as Republicans. So again, that strategy to cater to conservative Christians, that will work for now, but it's not going to last. And I think that's also a warning to Democrats. Like, stop pandering to Christians, much less one type of them. Democratic candidates should be pushing for religious freedom for everybody. They should be pushing for church-state separation rather than using Christianity as some sort of default option. And I think those results that are broken down by age, that should terrify pastors here, because the future does not look good for organized religion, especially white evangelicals, because younger Americans who have now grown up in a country surrounded by racist, misogynistic, anti-science, pro-MAGA, pro-cruelty Republicans, they are deciding they don't want anything to do with any religion that finds Trumpism acceptable. And more than a third of Americans under 50 are fed up with organized religion. And even more of them don't want to be part of any club that latches their faith onto Donald Trump. So what do you think is going to happen when those people get older? There's no reason to think they're going to find Jesus when they get older. They want nothing to do with organized religion. Here's another part of that survey, also fascinating. Where are the atheists? Where are the religiously unaffiliated? This is where they are across the country. The more blue the color is, the more they're in that area. So the more blue, you're getting closer to 62% of the area is religiously unaffiliated. And I know it's hard to see this when you go deeply in, but okay, let's go to Mississippi right over here. Yeah, look, there's lots of pockets of white. There's not a lot of blue. You go to Texas, you see a lot of those rural parts of Texas are extremely white, both on the chart and literally. And you're not going to find a ton of atheists. But again, because land doesn't matter as much as population distribution, when you see where the big cities are, especially in these red states, you can tell where the big cities are by where you're seeing some of those groups, those blue little areas, the blue islands in red states. I would also point out that let's look at Chicago, right by Lake Michigan over there. That doesn't look particularly blue. And it doesn't because, there's more diversity in big cities as well. So let me zoom out here again. There are a lot of religiously unaffiliated people, in the Northeast. That's not surprising. In parts of Nevada and California and the Pacific Coast and places like that. In rural areas, some places, you might find some religiously unaffiliated people because the churches haven't infested those areas. However, we're all over the place. There's religiously unaffiliated people all across the country. So that's good to see. The last thing I want to point you to, similar map, but it's a different one. This is religious diversity. If it's a 0, if it's a white color on this map, that means everyone's the same religion. And if it's really dark blue, that means all these religions are equally spread out. And you can see, where do you see homogeneity? Like, where's the homogenous parts of the country? Again, you look to Mississippi, you look to the Bible Belt. That's relatively white because everyone's kind of the same religion, minus those pockets of diversity there. But even, for all the crap the coastal states get, like, oh, New York is, godless, California is godless. According to this chart, that's not what's going on at all. You'll actually find more religious diversity there because, again, if they were all godless in California, that state would be white on this map. It's not. You actually see more religious diversity in those coastal states, in the Northeast, in the West, more religious diversity there than you would in the Bible Belt, where you're not going to hear as many alternative points of view. So again, another fascinating thing about this survey. In case you're wondering, just to rattle this off here, there were some counties, like with at least 10,000 people in them, with huge populations of non-religious people. Specifically, here's the list I want to show you. Let me share this with you here. These are where all the non-religious people are congregated. San Juan County, Washington, 62% non-religious. Gunnison County, Colorado, 61%. And you can see, look at the states represented: Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Washington, Vermont. That's where the non-religious people are. Those are the most non-religious counties in the country by percentage. Why don't you see, like, San Francisco? You would think, oh, that's got to be godless, right? No, there are religious people there too. They just get that reputation or something. Also, what's really interesting? I want to show you those numbers again right here. When they did this survey, like in a few years ago, the most non-religious county in the country had 49% non-religious. So here, the top, 9 counties, they are all higher than the most non-religious county the last time they did this survey. So very interesting there. Which counties are the most religiously diverse? Montgomery County, Maryland. That gets the high score for religious diversity, whereas the very bottom of the list, the most one religion in our area, part of the country, all 3 of them are in Mississippi. Holmes County, Chickasaw County, and Simpson County in Mississippi are the least religiously diverse in the country. So again, you could have predicted some of that information, but it's always helpful to have concrete numbers. It shows us our nation is becoming more religiously diverse and less religious overall. And we are at a time, you all know this, where white Christian nationalism threatens our lives, using Project 2025 as their playbook. But that's not because most Americans want that. It's because, the reason it's a threat is because more Americans are rejecting that way of life. And the white Christians who are so used to privilege and power are refusing to cede any of that ground. They don't want to give up any of that. So they're trying to use whatever power they have left to shove their religion on everyone else. And it is imperative that you're not voting for any of that stuff. I'll pause there for a bit, take any questions. Otherwise, I think I may be done today. Oh, thank you, Carla, for that donation. Just admire you so much. Want to say thank you from Missouri. Yes, and as you saw from those maps, there are many non-religious people in Missouri. Thank you. The theme of that chart should be, you won't believe it. I like that. That is clever. Thank you. It's amazing how many young people of all religious persuasions are leaving their parents' religion. Yeah, you know what? There is, I think it might be the Pew Research Center. When they do their big, massive once a decade surveys about religion, the thing I love looking at for the past couple times they've done it is they always do a religious switching section where they say, what religion were you as a child? What religion are you now? And what you find is exactly what you just pointed out. How many people have left the religion they grew up with? Like people leave Catholicism. Like for every one person who becomes a Catholic, I'm making this up, don't quote me on this. For like every one person who enters Catholicism, 7 leave it. And for the non-religious group, if you were raised non-religious, for every one person who finds Jesus, like another 7 people become non-religious. That religious switching where we take the people who are leaving organized religion and very few go out is always fascinating to see. And I always look forward to that sort of information. Now, that must terrify the evangelicals. No wonder they're trying to create a theocracy. No kidding. Again, they're very powerful right now. That's what Project 2025 is. No one wants what they are selling, and so they have no choice but to force it on us because they sure as hell are not persuading people. Seems like Republicans are currently targeting Generation Alpha with horrible right wing memes. Yeah, and guess what? It's not working. Their memes are bad. They don't have a sense of humor. Um, By the way, if you're looking for something to watch, Right Wing Watch mentioned this on Twitter the past couple of days. There is a anti-abortion activist by the name of Janet Porter, and several years ago she said, "I'm making a sitcom," and like she aired a preview of it. I think she already like filmed it, fundraised for it. She was looking to distribute it, and she just recently started releasing it on her YouTube channel, like previews of the episodes. Again, a right wing sitcom where some woman is trying to date again or something like that. It is the cringiest, most MAGA type of humor. I use that word loosely. You will ever see. And I've seen a couple of clips so far, and oh my God, it's the worst possible thing to watch. It's so bad. It's Janet Porter. The show is called What a Girl. It's not What a Girl Wants, something like that. But go look Right Wing Watch because they've posted about Janet Porter a couple times this week, and they will have links to her show, and it's horrible. Does non religious just mean not practicing, or does it mean I do not have religious belief? Again, it's usually self identified. So a lot of people say, you know what? I am not a practicing whatever, so I call myself non religious. I may not be an atheist. Maybe I believe there is a higher power of some kind, but it's not the sort you would find a church pastor defining it as. So it is a big umbrella when we talk about unaffiliated, the non religious. It's a little bit of everything. They're kind of wishy washy in a lot of ways. But it's a mix of all of that. It's people who don't practice, it's people who may not believe, have serious doubts about God, and they may say, you know what, I don't belong to any organized religion. There's a reason why Republican policies make it harder to vote, particularly for those who generally vote Democrat. Yeah. I mean, they're doing this across the board. Republicans are targeting the young, the non white, the poor. In Texas right now, they're going after like the most populated county in the state to make it harder for people to register to vote. Because when people vote, they lose. They know that. What I don't know is, do young people know that? Like how hard Republicans are trying to make sure you don't register to vote, you can't register to vote. And again, if you live in like a swing state, figure out how to vote. Go knock on doors for a campaign if you can. But please, I said this earlier, maybe online somewhere, but I've heard so many politicians say election day is November 5th. And no, that's not right. The election ends on November 5th. There are so many times you can vote before then, and you should. I'm going to vote by mail and I'm going to do it early. I'm going to bank that in. And then you know what? If there's some screw up, I have time to fix it. But also, I've never had a screw up. It's pretty easy in Illinois. But also, if something happens on election day and you can't vote or the weather is really bad or something where you live, you are going to be really happy that you voted early. So, like, seriously, go register to vote now if you haven't already, and then go sign up to vote by mail or go vote early. Do not wait until election day to vote. That is a dumb thing to do. Just get it out of your system. Go vote early. It's fine. It's fine. I've done it for the past several elections, and it's so damn easy. And I can track the fact that my ballot was received and checked and accepted and all that stuff. Go do it. And yes, even if you don't live in a swing state, you should still do all that. How do you think the delay in Trump's sentencing will affect the outcome of the election? Yeah, his sentencing has been delayed till like weeks after the election. I don't know if it's going to affect that much because Trump's already been convicted of the crimes, right? Like a jury convicted him. He's been charged, convicted. All we're waiting for is the sentencing. He's a convicted felon. If that doesn't convince you not to vote for him, I don't think a potential jail sentence is going to change your mind at this point. So I don't think it's going to make a big deal. I really don't understand the people who are like iffy about Donald Trump right now, and a possible jail sentence is the only thing that could sway their minds at this point. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not have an opinion on the guy at this point? And also, I mean, who are these crazy people who are like, he's great? JD Vance is awesome. Like, what is wrong with those people too? So no, I don't think it's going to make a huge decision. It's frustrating because there's a special justice system in America just for Trump, and it's no justice system. Like he gets his own court process all the time. Everything always breaks his way, legally speaking, it seems. So it's frustrating, but I don't think it's going to change anything that's going to happen. All right. I think we're done. I'm so glad to have you back, Den. Thank you for your help tonight. And thank you all for watching. If subscribe to the newsletter already. And I hope to see you next Friday night. Have a good weekend, everybody.